fun time and bah! As you can see, I'm starting off with another sphere, pretty much very much what I did with Doom's helmet, but this time I've learnt somewhat a lot more from making that helmet on how spheres and how things should look. So in today's episode, I'm actually making Meta Knight. If you don't know who Meta Knight's, go Google it. If you want me to tell you, he is a playable character in the Super Smash Bros. Series, and he's also most likely mostly the main villain for the Kirby series. And in no way is this character is totally affiliated with Nintendo, but in no way, how should you say it? Listen, everything that I'm doing here is for my own creative. I don't know. There's something I had to say about copyright, saying that all characters are here because of Nintendo and used for like personal creative gain or whatever, something like that. I mean, I'm not here to make a profit off it. I don't think it's kind of sketchy when it comes to copyrights these days, so I'd rather not talk about it. But obviously these characters are all from Nintendo and only using it in a periodic manner, obviously because I don't think Nintendo have Meta Knight in Minecraft like this. Not in this way, that's for sure. Just all his likeness and pretty much anything else about Meta Knight all belongs to Nintendo. So just saying it out there for now. I say it in the video because I have to. Well, I could just do it in text at the beginning, but I'm too lazy. But anyway, as you can see, I'm already starting off straight away with the mask. I feel like the mask was like the most important part, or the most easily identifiable feature of Meta Knight that makes Meta Knight who he is, because he actually hides his entire face behind a mask. Not that I have actually known whether he actually removes it or not in the actual series, but I find him one of those more intriguing characters that I quite like. There's just a bit of mysterious behind it. And obviously he has the iconic yellow eyes with everything else black, so I think it looked really cool that way. So basically what I'm doing now is just building up off the existing sphere, and to be fair, I thought it looked really, really nice. The way that this white, I think it was diorite, I'm not sure, I really keep forgetting these block names, considering that I make constructed videos every 2 weeks or so. I'm pretty sure it's every 2 weeks. I should really know these names by now, but I don't, sadly. But anyway, basically what I'm doing is putting an extra layer right around this mask. I do come back and edit it up a bit because it did curve somewhat. I'm basically building, if you want to know what I'm building from, I'm actually building off one of his amiibos that is from the Kirby Midnight series. I know that his cape turns into wings, or he has a special cape that makes it turn into wings, but since I'm not accustomed to making wings in the first place, I decided to stick with the cape, as you'll probably see later down on the video. But here you go, you just see me placing down a shit ton. I also noticed that his mask doesn't completely cover his entire face, so it did end up coming back and deleting some of the blocks that I placed down so that you can still see some of his blue features from the front, not just his entire face. So yeah, I do come back and delete. So far, I was really, by the end of this, I was extremely happy in how it turned out. I mean, to me, it just looks fantastic, and I hope so you think that as well, because I've always liked seeing 3D models in Minecraft, but not ones that look like sticky figures, ones that are actually posed into a proper position, but obviously that requires a little effort. So there you go, I just deleted some blocks around the outside to make him look a bit more like his mask wasn't covering his entire face, just his main features like his eyes, I guess. So I'm pretty sure, I don't even know what I'm working on next, I'm not exactly sure. Do I work on the arms, the feet? Oh, I've already forgotten. Oh yeah, I work on the feet. And the feet, by far, were the worst thing I've ever worked on in this build. Well, not really, no. I mean, the Wally was big enough as it is with his tracks and gears on the side of his body, but the feet here were really finicky because he's got angled feet, and his feet are somewhat smaller or near the same size of his body. He also has, like, clamps of metal. Like, you'd think of a knight from, like, the medieval times. It has, like, armor around his hands, his gauntlets. Basically, think of gauntlets, but on your feet. Yeah, it might be kind of confusing, yes, I know, but that's the only thing I can say. Unless you have a look at the actual image online, then you probably understand where I'm coming from. So if it's, like, foot guards or shoes made out of steel. Maybe I should have started with shoes made out of steel. somewhat. Yeah, so the only reason why I'm placing down this green wool is because I just needed to mark out where everything was, because I didn't want the same type of purple conflicting with the darker blue that his body was made out of, because it made it kind of confusing. Just having that contrast, a high difference in contrast, mind you, makes it a tad bit easier to identify what's what, where things need to go. Well, that's what I believe anyway. I don't know if I actually keep all that green wool in there at the finished product. Who knows? So I'm just gonna cut it here and show you the end result of the feet. It does go through quite a lot of adjustments in between, but to be fair, I don't think you want to see me building feet that are just, they look both exactly the same, but you know, where am I going with this? I keep mumbling like no tomato, but never mind. Yeah, I'll cut to where the feet are complete. I'm pretty sure it's done now. Is it? I'm not sure. It's kind of hard to make sure these are edited correctly. Yes. I also noticed when I was doing this that maybe I should have gone with a lighter blue, but to be honest, I'm glad I went with the darker blue, because the lighter blue made it look a bit weird. In all fairness, I didn't really like the lighter blue, but the darker blue made it look a bit more realistic to what I was actually aiming for. So I think I work on the arms at this point, and since he was posing, it also posed. It's a difficult pose to pose. Ha ha ha, alliteration. Repetition right there. Note that in English. Such worthiness. Okay, worthiness, not really. But I started with the arms. I'm pretty sure I started with his right arm, or our left from our point of, or our POV. And I just extended it out by at least about several blocks, or at least 5 or 4. But I then quickly realized that since he was posing, he had to have his arms on an angle somewhat. So I think I end up going back and deleting it somewhat and putting it down to an actual proper scale of size. I also realized that with his gloves, it had like, it was basically like, think of boxing gloves, where it's really big around the wrist, then it goes really small back in just before it reaches the palm, and then goes really big again. Well, that's what I was getting off from the actual 3D amiibo model that I was copying from, so that's what I ended up having to do. I did end up making a few adjustments here and there to the fists, although they kind of do and kind of don't look like fists, because he's actually wearing like boxer-like gloves, which is surprisingly interesting considering that he's a master swordsman, not a boxer. Don't know why Nintendo decided to do that, but you know, you can't question their ideas, because I think they're an amazing company, by the way. I quite like their video games that they make, although I will say there are other people who make just as good video games. Now, I think I start with his left fist, or glove, and it proved a challenge to try and have him look like he's clenching his fists, as if he was ready to punch someone, considering that I'm working with blocks here on a lot smaller scale, and having that put into the 3D form was quite difficult without it trying to make it look, I don't know, let's just say fake, because yeah, I just don't want like just a stick or a ball like they used to do in the old 3D times. I mean, if you think of Super Mario 64 way back when, in 1996, he didn't have any fingers, he just had a fist, which was kind of surprising. It was just a fist, but anyway, it was just a ball, or hex, a polygon. But as I was saying, I just wanted something like that, but still trying to make it look like a fist. And I also noticed that he wears these gauntlet type things on his gloves. So again, I don't know why he has that, considering he's a master swordsman. Maybe he might use it as a form of deflection, but I honestly don't know. I haven't read too much into Midnight's actual character, but other than that, I know his sword is called Galaxia, which when he sheaths into wherever it is, it actually disappears and shrinks in actual physical size in the real world, where the other end of the sword's like in some other dimension, so that it doesn't hinder his movement when he's trying to jump around, because he can fly and all the rest of it. So I have done a bit of research on the actual character itself, but not to the extent of what his fighting skills and abilities were, other than the ones that you've seen in video games prior to watching this video. Or maybe if you're going to look up Wiki now, that's totally fine, I guess. The next thing I decided to work on was the back of his cape, and since his cape turns into wings and vice versa, I didn't want to do wings. I think it's one of the more difficult things to pull off in Minecraft, especially when you're limited to such a small size and scale. But other than that, his cape, like, I don't know, how would you say? I can't say it. It's like it thins up backwards behind him and curls to make it look like he's from like the late medieval era, where like Queen Elizabeth has, like, I think it's Queen Elizabeth, or was it Spain? I'm not sure. Basically, just think of like a cape that fans upward and then it comes back down again. It's really confusing, but if you just have a look at a photo on Google or wait until the finished product, then you'll probably understand what I'm trying to talk about. But yeah, it's kind of hard to talk about these things sometimes. But other than that, working on this cape was just, that back part was pretty good, but working on the actual cape itself, I think I work on just the back fin part so I can get an idea how big I want the cape later down the track. But when I actually do build the cape, it was one of the more difficult things I thought would be somewhat easier, because I end up having to spend a lot of time trying to fix up the small mistakes that I've made in the past with like making circles, because obviously circles in Minecraft is based on blocks and pixel size, and that can also be a worrisome factor because of how many times you can screw something up because it doesn't look exactly circular, or it doesn't look like it's curved correctly, it just looks flat, or there's too many blocks somewhere and it just doesn't look right. So there you go, I think I just basically thinned off the edges and it looks pretty much exactly like that if you look at most images online. Even in the 3D model, I think it looked pretty cool. Also, I thought it would be a good idea to replace the existing blue blocks with light blue blocks, and I'm just going to say right now, it was a bad idea. And at that note, I'm going to cut it because I end up having to replace all these blocks I placed down anyway, so see you in a sec. Okay, now that I replaced all the blocks I foolishly placed down and replaced with light blue, and now I've replaced with dark blue, I decided to work on his like shoulder pads. And the only reason why I was thinking about changing in the first place is because the purple was very close to the same color of his skin. I guess a hue color of his skin anyway. But these shoulder pads were fairly more unique than just traditional knight's armor that would just cone around like the form of their shoulder. This one like perked upwards and then also coned over his shoulder somewhat, which made it a bit more harder to form together. But in the end, I think I did justice, considering that it looked pretty good. Although what I'm doing right now, I end up having to edit at a later point because I noticed that his shoulder wasn't. It looks like his shoulder's been pushed downward, and that isn't exactly right. So I do come back and make it a bit more of a shoulder-like thing, because look at it, it looks like it's just digging into his skin there. But I didn't realize it until like halfway. I do put like those white blocks down to put his logo, which is very identifiable on his ship and his left shoulder pad. But here we go. Actually, on the actual right-hand side of his shoulder, his right shoulder pad, it ended up being exactly what I should have made for the left shoulder pad, but I didn't make for the left shoulder pad, sadly. But as you may have noticed already, that I've also lined the outside of his shoulder pad with yellow wool. I would have used gold, but I didn't like it how it looked too metallic, and that with his, it should be seamless all the way through. I wish we had like connected textures with the gold. Then that way I would make it a lot nicer, but unfortunately Shvax doesn't do that with everything. Although I'm pretty sure there are mods out there that do that, which I should get some installed, but I didn't. See, I already noticed straight away, and I ended up deleting the blocks and changing them up so they looked more authentic to his character's shoulder pads. So yeah, that's why I lined the outside of it with yellow wool instead of gold, because it looked too tiley and it didn't look exactly connected to one another, which I was kind of sad that I didn't get the opportunity to use. But other than that, I'm pretty sure the shoulder pads were one of the more easier things to do, considering how small they were. The only thing I had left to work with was his sword and his cape. So I do the sword last because I think the sword is one of the more easier things to do, and I decided to take on the challenge of doing the cape first off, more than the sword. And with that note, the cape, not to sound like a negative retort or anything, I don't want to be negative. I mean, try everything you can do in this world and take on a challenge, but know when you've hit your limit, I guess. Because this took a lot longer than I expected it to take. It was like a decent hour, I'm pretty sure. No, it was like 40 minutes. Not as long as it took to make the Wally, mind you, but it took a while for me. But anyway, I'm glad I stood up to the challenge, considering that it was a good challenge. I really needed to stretch out my creative mindset about how I build things now with Minecraft. Considering I've been watching a few videos of how to make yourself a better Minecraft builder. Considering that there are times when some builds I've made, I'm like, yeah, that looks cool, and others are like, yeah, that looks bad. Although, trial and error, of course, you can't get anywhere without learning from your mistakes, obviously. So, you know, learning from mistakes when I did the Doom mask and how it awkwardly looked like it didn't have enough detail, I finally made sure that when I made another spherical image or something similar like that, in this case Meta Knight, it would look a lot better. Now I'm just rambling on about this instead of talking about what I was actually building. Good grief. Yeah, I'm building the cape. So I'm probably going to cut this out too, because the cape, I mean, in all fairness, it is very, very difficult to try and explain something that it just means you just built a cape. So yeah, I'll cut. Long story short, it took a while to make the cape, and I'll show you the finished product before I make the sword. Alright, I'm back after a devastatingly long 15 minutes, and this is 15 minutes in real time, considering this is sped up by 316.46%. That was about 45 minutes of me sitting here just waiting for the video to finish. But this is what to be fair, I actually went off and did some other things knowing how long it would take. So I didn't sit here for the entire time. So, I move on to the sword, and I really think I did that cape enough justice as it per se. Considering 15 minutes was quite a long time. There were so many readjustments I had to make, it was frankly a bit ridiculous. But what I liked about his sword is that it had, what was more unique about his sword I should say, is that it had spikes growing, pretty much like spikes growing off it. Although it was a lot harder to get that more defined shape, but considering I'm using blocks. Yes, I could have used stairs, but there were no stained stairs, I'm pretty sure. Stained clean stairs. So I, you know, did as much as I could with what I could work with. Considering that I am working in Minecraft after all, I'm not actually modeling in real life on like Maya or something like that. I really wish I could have had that sword on an angle, but sadly I couldn't. So there you go, there's the finished product of Meta Knight from Nintendo. Please do not sue me. The likeness of your character is very nice, don't sue me. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching this episode of me building Meta Knight. Tell me if you want me to build any other character or anything else in the comments below. I mean, I thoroughly enjoy just doing this every 2 weeks or so. Just use my creative energy flow through my body to my hand by clicking a mouse button thousands of times. But no, in all seriousness, yes, I do like enjoying creative things. I like to draw and do other things. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching this episode, and I salute to you. Bye!
Exactly as briefed. Good work.
Wow. It's like, oh, forget it. Skirmish!